In this video, I shall discuss a method to quantify intellectual contribution of an author for the production of a paper. The main challenge is that the order of the authors in the byline does not follow any universal standard. The order is mostly decided by the author, who controls and supervises the research. Junior authors or students mostly accept the decision even if they are not satisfied. However, position of an author in the byline is becoming increasingly important for employers. The task of assigning the right position for an author is not easy and even complicated when the number of authors in multi-author papers exceeds beyond normal practice. Multiple authorship has increased to such an extent that the trustworthiness of scientific communication system has been called into question, and such hyperauthorship phenomenon was labeled as a postmodern perversion. A physics paper had a record-breaking number of more than 5,000 authors. Indeed, there is an increasing trend of transdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, and collaborative research that might have resulted in the increasing number of authors in multi-authored papers in the last few decades. However, it is well known that there are guest and gifted authors who appear in the byline without any intellectual contribution to the paper. The questionable practice of assigning guest or gifted authorship relies on the contribution of providing laboratory space, finance, and laboratory reagents. There are others who become authors only because they are head of the departments or have no contribution at all. As a mechanism to put a check on such practices of not following any reasonable way to order the authors in the byline and becoming an author without intellectual contribution, we proposed a tool called relative intellectual contribution. Relative intellectual contribution is calculated based on the principle that an individual must contribute to at least one intellectual activity that is involved in the production of a paper. Now, let us see the steps to calculate relative intellectual contribution, ICR. First, we need to identify the list of intellectual activities that are involved in the production of the paper. The list may vary from one paper to another. Then we assign a weighing factor for each intellectual activity. It is important to note that the sum of the weighing factors for all intellectual activities for the given paper must be 1 or 100%. Then we need the list of authors who will be evaluated for their contribution. In the next step, contribution of each author for each intellectual activity is assigned. In this example, contribution for formulation of the research proposal of MTR is 85% and NH is 15%, while the other two authors did not have any contribution. The sum of contribution to each intellectual activity by all authors also must be 1 or 100%. In a similar manner, contribution of all authors for other intellectual activities are also assigned. Again, the sum of each of those must remain 1. Once contributions of all authors to all intellectual activities are assigned, then the relative intellectual contribution can be calculated using this equation, where n is the number of different intellectual activity. ICA is a value of the contribution of an author to an intellectual activity, and WF is a weighing factor of the given intellectual activity. In this given example, MTR has 51%, NLK has 15%, JMR has 25%, NH has 8% relative intellectual contribution for the production of the paper. Now let us see some of the possible applications of ICR. Quantifying authors' relative intellectual contribution to a paper is a way to measure who has a higher contribution than the others. ICR then can be used to order the authors in the byline. A higher ICR could be used to assign an earlier position in the byline. The impact of a scientist is popularly measured by the citation of a paper. Any citation that is received by a paper is generally claimed by all authors, although they have different contributions. Therefore, ICR could be used to calculate T-index to distribute citation of a paper according to the ICR. It also can be used to calculate a modified H-index to overcome the concern of overfluousness of how H-index is being used currently. ICR is not a total solution to the concerns of unethical practice in assigning authorship, but it might help. In fact, no single tool or policy is sufficient to stop unethical practice in scientific misconduct. It is the moral and ethical standard of individual scientists that is most important in the first place.